Do you think that the Israeli government, all of them, wants always that the conflict to be there? Some kind of conflict is giving better situation inside?
What do you mean a better situation inside?
I mean, maybe finding an enemy is giving the people inside better interrelations.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yes. Okay. No, I'm not saying yes to that. I'm saying, first of all, the government is, I mean, people love to just say, oh, I don't hate the Israeli people, I hate the government. The government's made up of people.
People.
They are people. They act in a different way than the average person would because they're in the public eye. So they have to act, so they're a little bit more limited, let's say. And people elect them, so it's a certain representation of what the Israeli people, in theory, think. But it doesn't always match. Do they have an interest in the conflict? I think subconsciously, yes. I think we all do. I don't think, there's some people who claim in Israeli society that Israeli society would unravel or something, or it would, meaning the cleavages, the differences in the different sectors between, let's say, Moroccans and Ashkenazis and whatever, would undo, and there would be all this hate between us and the religious and the secular. I don't believe that, because first of all, maybe between secular and religious, just about the idea of people pushing their religion on you. But that's as far as it'll go, and it won't really turn very violent, actually. Israeli society is pretty unified. I mean, even though there's right and left and nobody agrees and everyone fights, they all love each other. Like, it's kind of bizarre. They have this very unified culture in a lot of ways. It's sort of developed as an Israeli culture, and it's not even though it's the Jewish culture, as a Jew who came from somewhere else, I don't really relate to it. It's a totally different culture. It's an Israeli culture. It's not like, I can't just feel like I'm part of it. I feel totally like an outsider. Okay, so now, the government, I think subconsciously most people and the government as their representatives do sort of have a secret enjoyment, or there's a secondary gain to the conflict of making you feel insular. And it's part of the Jewish psyche we were talking about before, of feeling, my group, of the in-group is, makes me feel secure and cared for, and we're all together in this. I don't think they consciously perpetuate it. I think what they do is they are reacting, mostly emotionally, to what they think Palestinians are doing and thinking, based on what they see. And most of them don't really have any depth most of them have never really talked much to a Palestinian other than maybe members of the Knesset, and even then they sort of see them as slight enemies, and those people kind of act like idiots anyways. I don't think it's on purpose. I think it's more of a sort of psychological thing that we do, and if there was a change, we'd probably see it. Meaning, if that's one of the reasons I don't think any agreement will ever solve this conflict. I really don't. I think we're just too different at this point in time, right? I think you're right. I think once there's much better education in the West Bank, and that we're closer to both being able to question everything, we'll be in a lot better place. Totally. Even if we don't speak the same language. And Israeli culture, it allows for a certain amount of questioning.
It's more open, yeah.
But it's more open. But it's not matched on the other side, so there's nothing you can talk to each other. Different culture, different language. So few people speak Arabic in Israel, so few Palestinians speak Hebrew. A lot of people don't speak English. We never communicate. I'm getting totally off track here. It kind of perpetuates. And then that's why I say any agreement I will personally accept, because it changes the dynamics. It allows for an openness. It allows for something to change. Even though it'll probably get the extremists out to do terrible things to each other, and that's why I know it'll probably fail. Sorry, I think it will. But it might allow for people to think differently, because right now everybody's everyone's thinking emotionally. Like, you have these Likud mostly, and
I'm going to ask something about that, by the way.
Sure. And Jewish Home, Beit Yehudi, they're all just, they say the dumbest things, and they come up with the dumbest laws, and they're all based on emotions.
Lieberman. This is Lieberman.
Yeah, like all these people. Like, it doesn't matter. Something happens. Like,
Beit Yehudi is Lieberman.
No, he's, blanking on the name of this. Israel Beitenu. No.
Yeah,
Beit Yehudi and Israel Beitenu. There's two different. They're two different.
It's different. Okay.
The point is, they're all just thinking through emotions as opposed to any long-term goals or ideas. They're just thinking, oh, we need to force, I'm just giving you an example I read in the newspaper 2 days ago, we need to force all Israeli Arabs to put flags in their community centers. Like, it's just so stupid. Like, I get it, this is a country, and yes, we want everyone to feel that, but it's just so driven on emotions,
silly, yes.
right? It just becomes silly. And that's your long-term planning, in terms of what we're going to do. That's ridiculous. Focus on what is the vision for this place. And if my people are saying it's all Israel, Palestinians are a minority within Israel, let's pretend, you're all going to get citizenship, let's just pretend this would happen. Okay, well then go with that vision. I don't think it'll work. It's not going to work. But at least have a vision. At least have something. Everyone is reacting, always reacting. So, again, I don't think any of this is necessarily pre-thought up. There's no maniacal. I know people love to think of Bibi sitting here. He doesn't have a mustache, but I don't know, because this is a very Western idea of like he's conniving and he's thinking of things. It's all based on reactions and staying in political power and thinking you're representing your people. I don't think they're representing any of us very well. That's my big issue. So
I always think the same, by the way.
Okay. So you were going to ask me another question?
That's the thing. You said that's pretty much sure. It's right. That government came from people, and through all these years, we have seen that the left party, let's say Labour Party, they are always very close to agreement with the Palestinians, like Ehud Barak and Yitzhak Rabin, and all these people.
So was Olmert, though. So was Olmert to surprise people.
Yeah. So why the Israelis now are choosing the wrong side? Why are they choosing Likud and
because
Kadima
you want everyone has this idea. Ariel Sharon, he's a perfect example because he was the last great leader of this type, of the old general. He's like your uncle who's in the mafia, who if somebody messes with you, he's going to break your knees. Yeah. That's what they want. They want someone to protect them. Yeah, that's what they're thinking. They look at the Palestinians, and rightfully think this way, that the place is a mess. There's also no vision, meaning there's Fatah who's speaking out of both sides of their mouths, both violence and peace. And then there's Hamas and all these other organizations and people who represent, behind them. The Palestinian society can't get its act together. They can't even create a country. Like there's no economy here. Yeah. I mean, they don't know this, but I happen to know this. There's no infrastructure here, and they've been in charge of infrastructure for 20 years. Yeah. There's no the roads are terrible. And I know nobody complains about it in Palestine. I'm thinking, these are your issues, people. You don't have water most of the time, which maybe, we were talking about this before, may have a lot to do with Israel. I'd love to investigate. But it has a lot to do with infrastructure as well, because 50% of Palestinian water is apparently wasted through bad pipes. So that's been 20 years of this. It's not like, 2 years.
Very bad infrastructure.
So people look at, and even though most Israelis have no clue what's going on here, but they get the idea that this place is a mess. Or maybe even through racist ideas.
Fortune to restructure all that.
Oh, it's huge, and they don't really understand. And part of it might also just be total racism. They just look down on Arabs and thinking it's, look, these people, we're the villa in the jungle, we're civilized, they're not. So they're looking out for somebody who's going to protect them because they see Palestinians as violent, and sadly Palestinians end up proving that. And I always said, and there's no way to know this, and if this is true, but my theory is that if Palestinians had been passive from the beginning, you probably would have guilted the Jews into a state and probably into a one-state solution long ago. Yeah. Because the powers of mostly the Ashkenazis, that's the funny thing, the Ashkenazi Zionists, it was so easy to manipulate them into we just want to live with you, we're just going to go live in our house. It's because we're suckers, we're total suckers for wanting to live in peace. Well, anyways. And so now, after all this time and all this anger and frustration, and just like people here look to Oslo and say, we got nothing out of it, in fact we lost, Israelis also look at Oslo and say...
They look at the same way.
The same way, not lost.
Oh.
No. We look at Oslo and we say, we got violence. All we got was violence. Second Intifada killed anything to do with the left.
Yeah.
And even then before, they looked at the left with suspicion. Anyone who was even the people on the left, they said, forget it.
Forget it.
Yeah.
It's not realistic anymore.
It's not realistic. We are living in the Middle East. You have to think like Middle Easterners. So you want Ariel Sharon, who's dead, but you want someone tough like Lieberman, who's going to break people's knees.
That's what they want.
Even if they personally would never do it, that's what they want.
They want someone.
Who's going to protect them. Yeah. So that guy in the video who was asked, that guy was kind of no offense, an idiot. But that's kind of who they want to elect. That's the type of person, even if they don't necessarily think that way. Which is really sad.
Really
because there is no vision in that. There can't be peace in that.
It will never be like that.
And it never will be.
If you always choose someone who's not willing to make peace, that will not happen.
Well, they might be willing to make peace, but it's got to be peace meaning Israel controls. You have to be, and not passive in the sense that Palestinians have to be subservient and slaves. Not at all. Israelis would be like, yeah, you're equal. But we control the situation. It's our army, it's our police, we don't trust you to do that. You can be businessmen, you maybe even get to be president. Like, that could even maybe happen. Maybe. And a lot of people are going to, in Israel, be like, no, can't do that. But in terms of like head of industries, doctors, Palestinians, no problem. It's about control. It's about the army controlling and politicians controlling.
Someone to protect them.
Someone to protect them. And it's because of our history. It's our psyche. It's we have issues. And I think the more that's part of the problem is the more we want that, we get into this weird dynamic of Palestinians reacting to it. Because they obviously don't come from a culture like that. They come from a culture where it's like, no, we're being taken advantage of. This is our land. For other reasons. But
that's it.